Hey, I got, you know where bees go to the bathroom at?
Where do bees go to the bathroom?
Saturday.
To the bee station.
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you.
It's on Saturday.
Okay, so they have me kind of giving you a little recap. And we're going to just go kind of at a year in review. Now that we're kind of we're almost done here. And then I'm going to finish with some things that I want you to concentrate on. And then I'm going to turn it over to... All right, so acquire equipment, right? You're almost there. If you're going to have bees, remember April 18th, right? So get your bottom board, get your first deep, get an inner cover and a lid. And of course the frames. And because you're going to have to feed the first year, we want you to get a feeder. Now you can do a frame feeder, which is perfectly fine. The commercial guys, they use them ad nauseum. You can get a Miller feeder, which is that box in the top that has a plastic insert, which can fit like 2 gallons in it. You can just use jars with holes in it. Hey, I did that for decades. I can a lot. And so I've got, just a second, I have got canning jars out. I mean, seasonally, they're all over the place, right? Usually by the end of the winter time, you know, most of my canning jars are empty. Guess what? Just in time to feed my bees. All right, you had a question?
What about bucket feeders?
You know, bucket feeders are fine. You know, basically a bucket feeder is a plastic bucket, right? Has a lid, and you've got little tiny holes in the lid, right? And you tip it over, and the suction keeps it, you know, from drilling all over the place. They're fine.
There's not a problem with flooding?
There's not a problem with flooding, is that what you say?
Yeah.
Until that bucket gets a suction, gets a vacuum in it?
Everything's cool until the sun shines on it.
Everything is good until they warm up, and then they start pumping.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they do have a kind of this. I would not recommend bucket feeding unless you're an experienced beekeeper, because you have to get the holes just right. A lot of people put too many holes in bucket feeder lids, causing pumping, and basically once they warm up, they just go.
Right, to start, yeah.
And then the pressure just squirts the sugar. So don't. Jars. No, not the little jar feeder that fits in the front. You know, it's not warm enough here for that. But putting jars up on the inner cover is fine.
Is there a formula for the size of the holes in the jar?
Is there a formula in how many? I think it's the 1/64 drill with it, or a sharp nail.
I use a push tack.
Push tacks are fine. And I don't have the number, but you can get on the web and I'm sure.
My smallest drill bit is a 16. I don't know that they make 64 thunder.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they
There
do.
you go, a number 60 or number 55 or so.
Yep.
You can get them.
My purpose is not to get into those details right now. My purpose is to give you a recap of the year. And we can talk afterwards about some of the feeding details. This is all part of what I put, right? So, you know, feeding is an important part. Like I said, you know, screw top lid, got tons of quart jars. So you're going to install the package of bees, right? So April 18th, you're all going to come. You're all going to go to Stedman's. We're going to show you about every half an hour or so how to do packages, and you're going to stand there and go, "Oh my God, that looks frighteningly easy." And then you're going to get home and go, "Oh my God, this is frightening." But you'll get through it. And then we'll actually give you some details. Of course, how about feed? It is very important. You are going to be on new equipment. It's all on foundation. You really need to feed sugar water. And you're right. Sugar water is not hard. It's just warm water straight out of the tap. And granulated sugar, and stir it until it goes into solution. Don't get fancy. The bees are going to eat it up so fast, it's amazing. Joe, go ahead.
So do you use 1 cup of sugar to 1 cup of water, or do you use 1 pound of sugar to 1 pound of water?
It is by
Weight.
weight.
By weight, but it's close enough.
It's by weight, it's close enough, right, exactly.
They're both equivalent.
Yeah, so here's what I do. just so you know, I buy the 25-pound Costco bag, right? 25-pound bag. I fill up a 5-gallon bucket with just shy of 3 gallons or so of water, warm water. And I just pour the bag in and stir it. It's close enough. Okay? It's not complicated, but just it's by weight. 16 ounces to 16 ounces, you know, not right? So we want you to inspect your hives. We don't want you to ignore them, right? So, you know, we'll tell you, oh, stay out of your hive, you know, for the first week after the packages. Well, that's just to get them, you know, acclimated with the queens. But really, what you're gonna see this little back and forth as we guide you in that. Don't get into your hives. Get into your hives. Don't get into your hives. Get into your hives. Jerry.
Paul, how many people here are getting packages of sediments? Well, half the group.
And cargo bees over here, or you getting? And anybody else getting packages elsewhere? Northwest. Okay, good.
Has everybody got all their equipment all ready to go?
Yep.
Well, a few people say no. Well, you better before the 18th. Thanks, Jerry. It's a good reminder. It's like, yeah, okay, gotta get it. So add space as you need it. So as that first box becomes full of bees, you know, 8 frames or more of bees, ooh, better get a second box in there, right? When you add that second box, you need to feed them until, you know, most of those frames are filled up with honeycomb. Remember, they're building their home during this their first stage.
Yeah, you still put 2 boxes.
Prevent, celebrate, or catch your first swarm. Oh yeah. Well, you know, we talked about swarms earlier and all that kind of stuff. Some beekeepers are going to find out that they've fed so much that their hives are just bursting with bees, and that they suddenly have swarm cells. It's like, God darn it, you were so successful, you created your own swarm. Yeah, it happens. Buy more equipment. You know, so like honey supers, right? So let's say you have a really successful colony. You are in, you know, July. There's still a lot of stuff blooming. You have 2 full boxes full of bees. They're bringing nectar in. Why not buy honey supers, right? Why not stack them up? Let them give you honey. Some people get really lucky in the first year. We did. We had 2 colonies our first year. Both colonies produced honey for us the first year. Surprised the bejeebies out of us. And then we had to then extract honey. And all in our first year, it was just, we didn't realize that there was so much of the hobby. It's just amazing. And don't forget, part of it is just sitting there and watching your bees. I mean, I hate to say it, in our first year, we were in full bee suits, afraid of the bees, yet we took lawn chairs. And we sat like, here's the hives, and here's us, and we just sat there and watched our bees. For hours on end, it was incredibly fascinating to watch the different colors of pollen coming in and the heavy loads of nectar. It's just fascinating stuff. I mean,
parts of your body react to being stung.
Yeah, and you'll find out what parts of your body react to stuff. Right? You know, and then we learned that you don't need bee suits to do a lot of things, but we'll get you around there. You know, inspect and prepare for the fall and winter. You remember I had last chatted with you about fall prep. It's really key to making sure that you do stuff for your bees early enough so they survive the winter. I don't want you to have to buy packages the following year. I want your bees to survive. And then make plans for next year. Read beekeeping books. At Stedman's is our entire library. Go back there and look and see what might interest you. You know, like, I don't know, there's just a plethora of books there to read and absorb information. You have a question? No. Fine. Sorry, I thought, why am I focused on it? Any questions on the gear in beekeeping? All right, so part of being prepared is paying attention to your bees. You know, and I talked about this little dichotomy, ooh, am I in there too much, am I not in there enough, you know, that kind of stuff. And as a beginner, I mean, I was in there once a week. I mean, every weekend I was in my hives to a greater or lesser extent. And I think that if you don't break them apart, the entire colony apart, you know, opening up the lid, taking some frames out is not going to kill you, or the colony. So, bee diseases and pests for your first year. I do want you to become familiar with those diseases and pests. So, do read at least those sections in your pamphlet on that. And there are some other really good pamphlets out there that are by WSU and what's the one from British Columbia? Yeah. Sorry. It's one of the references in there. But do become familiar with them because your first year, you're probably not going to have much experience with this kind of stuff, except for Varroa. And so, the more you understand about American foul brood, and, you know, and some of those brood diseases, it'll give you kind of a heads up. So when you call an experienced beekeeper, you can at least tell them what you're looking at. The second line there, be able to recognize and count varroa mites. What I'd really like to do is come to the field day since you can see us do it. So you become familiar with, you know, like sugar rolls, you know, basically putting the bees in a jar full of powdered sugar and shaking them up and counting varroa mites, or sticky boards, things like that. I want you to become used to that because you need to pay attention to varroa mites if there's anything else that you do. Preparing a proper location for the hive. So if you haven't started to give a real thought to where you're going to put your hive, think sunny spot. I personally prefer morning sun because I'm in a pretty shady property, so frankly it's my only opportunity. If I had sun all day long, I would take advantage of it. Out of the wind is best too. And I know that I have some friends in Port Townsend who are kind of up on the plateau, and God, it's always windy up there. And they stacked pallets next to their hives, and it actually was a really excellent windbreak. I'm not expecting you to be quite that crude, but anything works. Fence line, shrubs. Pollen patties, granulated sugar, powdered sugar. I don't know what that's in there for. Oh well. Go ahead.
On hive placement, so my intent is to put mine, I have a decent sized yard, we put it out in the yard, in the far end of the yard.
Okay.
Does it really matter how close it is to where people are moving around and stuff?
Does it really matter how close it is for your hive where they're moving?
Yeah, so if it's my yard, I'm gonna be out in the yard, mowing or moving around, and the hive is just over there, is that really a problem?
When I was doing urban beekeeping in Seattle, we had our 2 colonies in our driveway. You know, I mean, a good 12 feet from the cars, actually. And we learned our lesson about bee poo. Not too close. So most of our yards around here are fairly, most of us have fairly bit of property. Don't face your bee entrance towards your neighbors. You know, be nice. You know, they may like you as a, you know, beekeeper, but they may not like the bees having a flight pattern straight across their yard. That's all.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, well, hiving your package of bees. All right. So feed half of the pollen patties in the hive. You know, George, I have no idea what this is about pollen patty and why you would feed a pollen patty.
That depends upon the year. Some years, if it's really wet, the bees can't get out to get that pollen to raise the first brood. So in inclement weather, you would put a half a pollen patty in there. The bees would eat that. Another week later, if it's all gone, you add another one. This year,
Okay.
I don't think we need it.
Yeah, I was going to say that this year everything has started so early that you probably don't need a pollen patty. there's plenty of opportunity for them to get out. Feeding sugar water, on the other hand, is very important. I like to feed with a top feeder, either a jar or a Miller feeder. And don't fill the Miller feeder all the way up. It's basically a plastic bucket full of sugar water, and I can't tell you how many times I've kind of pried it up off of the top of the box, and then sploosh. I've got sugar water.
Some of the bees are intensely interested in your front, yes.
When you use a Miller feeder, don't put it on top of the inner cover. Okay? It goes directly on top of the frames, just so you get that. And any questions on those basics? Go ahead, Joe.
Somebody said earlier something about don't wear black clothing because bees assume that it's a bear.
Yeah, don't wear black clothing, right?
But I've got a whole bunch of black sheep. Are those bees gonna attack me?
Yeah, and those beautiful black sheep, and some of them are brown too, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. They won't disturb your livestock.
Okay.
They really won't. What they're interested in is that black bear who's on top of their hive looking at them.
Okay.
And they're like,
You're right about that.
all right. So first week, right? So you got your packet. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I know it's really wet here, but do they need a source of water?
Yeah, in general, I like to provide my bees a source of water because I want them to have a consistent source of water. What I don't want them going is to my neighbor's hot tub,
Yeah,
right?
or their 5-year-old waiting pool.
Or their 5-year-old waiting pool. So whether it's a bird bath or whether it's a piece of I don't know, a pottery tray filled with moss and water, or I happen to have a pond on my property, so I've got the best of all worlds. But yeah, do provide me a source of water.
What I've seen in books is they put a bucket with water and then put a whole bunch of like wood shavings in it so they have something to land on and get the water out.
Yeah, you can do that, or like we've got tons of chicken waters that we use intermittently. I fill a chicken water up with water, and then I just put either shavings or moss in the trough on it. Water's down. So remove the queen cage after 3 or 4 days with the queen's release. Okay, so we'll show you how to use the little marshmallow method. And then if you use that, typically they'll chew the queen out within a couple of days, and they'll release her automatically. And then if not, then you'll release her. Perform a powder sugar mite test. And remember how we talked about half a cup of bees, putting those in a mason jar with a screen lid and putting a tablespoon of powdered sugar in there, rolling them around, dumping the powdered sugar out onto a piece of paper, and then counting the mites, if there are any. Now, as a package, you should have very few mites. There should be, I don't know, less than a dozen mites, easily. Boy, if you get more than 30 mites, though, that's a lot. That's more like a full-size colony. Keep feeding with sugar syrup. And then 1 month after hiving, check for mites again. You get this little thing about mites, right? Okay. If anything that you leave here tonight is stay on top of your mites, right? Test. Either use sticky board or doing powdered sugar. Either are fine. I like sticky board because I'm lazy. And I like to make my bees angry in other manners.
Really sticky board, you're not doing with sugar?
No, I do both. But it's just so fast for me to, after I've done my hive maintenance, I stick a sticky board in the bottom, and then I just come back next day. Done. And I count the mites. I don't have to get sticky with the sugar and all that kind of stuff. I actually find that a pain in the ass. But that's my own personal preference. I think I'm done.
Are you done?
I think that, well, how many slides do you have for your first before the end of July.
Or you're doing the year now, yeah.
Doing the year. Yeah, God, there's so much to a year. Man, who thought? You know, basically your colony's going to get larger. You're going to be looking at brood patterns. And all this time you're going to be coming to one or two of the field days or our apiary to see more experienced beekeepers do this stuff. So that way you feel very comfortable by July, actually getting into your colony and having your questions answered. And then we talked about preparing the hive for the winter, and that means deciding when or how to treat for varroa. There, now I'm done for the year.
Okay, now you're done for the, what's next?
That's you.
That's me. Okay. Becoming a better beekeeper of all the people to put on that title. Is this thing on? Can you hear me now? Okay. Becoming a better beekeeper. As opposed to becoming a lazier beekeeper, which may or may not coincide, or becoming a beekeeper that kills their bees every year or whatever. Your plans before taking this class, or to take this class: get a hive full of bees, reap the rewards of everlasting honey in abundant things where all you have to do is turn a tap on the hive and it starts coming out of the jar, right? Okay. Yeah, that's somewhat less popular. Okay. There we go. Your plans now are complete the beekeeping class. Okay, 11 minutes, something like that. It's 13 minutes, and or 12 minutes, you'll be there. Okay, get 2 hives of bees, if you possibly can. There are 2 reasons. You'll have something to compare your 2 hives to one another, and if one of them dies, you won't be out of the beekeeping business, okay? So you really want 2 if you can do it. Harvest the excess honey when available, not with the tap, okay? Perhaps in August. If you are a top bar hive beekeeper, you may want to wait until the next year to actually harvest your honey because it's hard to tell what's going on. But you'll harvest honey, if you get some, in August, if we have a really good year with blackberries. Or if you're really enterprising, you may move your hives around, take them up above 4,000 feet where the fireweed is good for you. And you think, manage your hives throughout the year, rather than simply ignoring them or being afraid of going in them or not knowing what you're going to see. You're not going to know what you're going to see. I remember the first time that the bees carried out a nearly completely formed larva, okay, had little purple eyes and a white body. I thought it was the end of the world. Poor George. I called him, oh my God, they've taken out a dead bee. It's the end of the world. That sort of thing will happen. That's why you want to find yourself a mentor to call and say, oh my God, they've taken out a dead bee. What does this mean? This means the bee died. And continually expand your knowledge and skills to fulfill steps 3 and 4, okay, which I think we'll come back to a couple of times. So continually expanding your knowledge and skills has 2 components. One component is being in the hive, and the other component is reading things, talking to people, getting other opinions, and seeing what other possible options are. Okay? Becoming a better beekeeper does not necessarily involve getting more of those, although I will say to you officially that you are going to get stung. Okay? You don't have to get stung a lot. And I will also say to you officially that you can wear as much protective equipment as you need to feel comfortable around your bees. Okay? There are some things that are really hard to do in gloves, okay? And you may get to the point where you feel very comfortable with your bees without gloves, without anything except maybe a veil or maybe not even that. But if that makes you uncomfortable and that keeps you out of your hives, then armor up however much you gotta armor up to go in your hives and take care of your bees, because that's what's really important. And you have to make them really, really, really angry to sting you through a bee suit. Okay. It is possible. And always remember that if you have one bee in the inside, it can only sting you once. Okay, all right. More about step 5. Why do you want to keep bees? That's a question you should probably continually ask yourself, and not just when your last colony dies, okay, but as things are going well. Why are you doing this, okay? Your answer may change from year to year. You may want more bees. You may want bees and honey. You may want more honey. You may want more bees. You may just find the coolest, geeky little insect that you've ever messed with, and they're very neat. You may want the cachet of having 60,000 stinging insects in your backyard. There are lots of reasons to keep bees. A lot of them don't involve honey or money. A lot of them are just for the sheer adventure and the interest of keeping these insects, and it may be because you want to save the world, and you're going to make sure that you breed a queen that is impervious to mites and makes tons of honey and is lovely and charming. You may want free medical care, okay? I was really having trouble with this elbow till I got stung right about here, and it's never hurt since. Something new. This is something new. If you haven't kept bees before, there's nothing quite like it, except that almost all of us can remember a relative somewhere in our past that kept bees. So we've been doing it for a long time. We've had a brief intercession while we've let the military-industrial complex feed us, and now we're going back to raising our own bees for whatever reason. And you may become a warrior for insect-pollinated plants to gain dominion over the planet over wind-pollinated plants. Okay? Or you may become a warrior for any of a number of other interesting causes that are involved with beekeeping. So those are reasons why you may want to become a better beekeeper. But you always want to become a better beekeeper, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to dive your hives 3 times a week. Okay? Part of becoming a better beekeeper is saying, no deal. Okay, I'll come back at some other time when something important is happening. Part of becoming a better beekeeper will be knowing when you need to pay attention to them and when you can leave them alone. Part of becoming a better beekeeper will be opening up your hive and really understanding what your bees are telling you. Get away. Okay, well, come on, things are still cool, things are still cool, things are getting uncool. Okay, then what are you going to do as a beekeeper? Are you going to bail? Are you going to wait? Are you going to keep going? And part of that depends on what you're having to do. Becoming a better beekeeper, let's see. What do you get out of keeping bees? And you're each going to have to answer that question for yourself. It really isn't that expensive as hobbies go. I mean, it's much cheaper than a Corvette or a Turbo Carrera, or for God's sake, a Jaguar. That question too may change. Okay, if beekeeping becomes a burden, then you're doing something wrong. Okay, if you're doing it and it's horrible for you, I hope you're making money or something. Because otherwise, what's the point? I mean, you should be having fun. Is there a better way to keep bees than what I am doing? Almost invariably. There certainly is a different way to keep bees, okay, than what you're doing. Okay? What don't I know and why don't I know it? Okay? One of the things that we just really strongly recommend is important for becoming a journeyman is to keep a log of what goes on in your hives. The first year, the log is that thick on my hives. It's got a little comma since then. But what don't you know and why don't you know? Why are they doing X? Why are they doing Y? Why are all the bees out front going, but they're not going anywhere? What's up with that? What are they doing? Okay, that's part of it. You can read books. You can call your mentor. There are some references to chapter 5. This is my copy of the hive. Actually, this is Brandy's copy of the Hives and Honeybee. I stole it from her. A timeless source of information. We'll talk about chapter 8. I think it's chapter 7 in that one. Best advice: becoming a better beekeeper. Number 1, learn from the bees. Watch the bees. If you have a question, why do I need to do blah, blah, blah? Ask the bees. Look at the bees. See if the bees are telling you. Go look in the hive and see if you have a swarming problem. Go see if you have a honey binding problem, if you have a bad queen, if you have American foul brood, if you have fill in the blank. If, why do you seem to have fewer and fewer bees, okay? Is it because your colony's dying out? And why is that happening? Learn from the bees, use a veil, a smoker, a hive tool, notebook, and no gloves, okay? No gloves can be challenging. There are certain things you will have to do with no gloves. And one of the very first things you will probably have to do with no gloves, unless you have very dexterous fingers, is put your package in. Because that queen is on a little dangly thing, and you've got to basically sneak her out and get the bees off of her. And they probably won't sting you. You've got to, but when you pick up that little cork and put the marshmallow in, that's a thing you have to do without gloves. It's really hard to do with. So, learn to use no gloves when you can. Know when it's time to use gloves, okay? It's one of those things. Pace, yes. If you see a professional beekeeper who has 500 hives to deal with that morning, they will move very fast. But even though they're moving very fast, they're paying attention to the bees. One of the wonderful advantages that we have if we only have 3 or 4 hives and all day to screw with them is that we can move really slowly. Learn to move at a pace which does not alarm them, okay? You don't have to move fast. If you don't have to move fast, don't move fast. The bees will tell you if you're crowding them, okay? So that's something to look at. Look at what the bees are doing. Look at what pace they want, okay? Early learning, okay? We're going to have some hands-on classes. I hope as many of you as possible have signed up for those classes because there is a component of beekeeping which you cannot learn from books. You simply have to go in there and look at it. And if you haven't done the sorts of things that beekeepers do, you're going to have to see them do that, okay? I learned a tremendous amount about beekeeping from being a helper in one of those classes one year with the people who have been keeping bees for years and years and years and years and learning how they manipulated things. So there's always things to learn, and hands-on is one of the best ways to learn. Participate in beekeeping association events. As a student, a volunteer, and assistant, let's see. This is not a beekeeping event. This is the day that 2 senior beekeepers, one of whom is George and I, basically took a Langstroth hive and cut all the edges off of them and put them in that Warre hive. That was quite a day, okay? It took 3 of us, actually. It took 2 of us to basically cut the frames down. We basically sawed through them and then cut through the comb, and then screwed basically an adapter on it and stuck it in the hive. And another person was just keeping the bees that had gotten into that hive happy, so they didn't get too carried away. But there are things like this where you can have mentors come and help you. There are days like this. This is obviously a class that we were teaching down in the apiary, as was this. Here's David Skoviak doing weird things. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. Can you sing it? Very nearly, okay. Best advice. Find someone who will help you keep your bees. Find a mentor. To help you accomplish your beekeeping goals. Read these little books by Larry Connor are superb. They're very small. They're very to the point. They're marvelous. Okay, and the Beekeeper Handbook is great. We have a library. You know about that. Chapter 8, or depending on your copy, I don't have the brown copy, Chapter 7 of The Hive and the Honeybee talks about the activities and behavior, okay? Read and read and read and see if you can see it. See if the bees are reading. Actually, they haven't read that book. Okay. And now, as the president, I want to thank our wonderful instructors who have given us tremendous impact. Round of applause. All of you for coming to this class, and hope you have wonderful success with your beekeeping. Thank you.